So welcome to Jumbo Ice and welcome to our lecture series called Daily MCQ Practice. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs through a set of 4 to 5 MCQs. So this lecture series basically covers current affairs through MCQs. Okay? Because MCQ practice is very important for your prelims examination. And let me tell you at the outset, current affairs constitute 40 to 50% of your prelims paper. 40 to 50 MCQs from your prelims exam are directly or indirectly related to current affairs. Therefore, we have launched this lecture series which covers your entire year's current affairs through MCQs. Okay, now 4 to 5 MCQs on a daily basis might seem like little effort, but if covered on daily basis, then these 4 to 5 MCQs would add up to more than 1200 MCQs. And these MCQs would be from current affairs alone. For polity MCQs, for geography, history, economy MCQs, we'll have separate lecture series. This just covers current affairs, and 1200 MCQs from current affairs alone are more than sufficient. Okay, so make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be a daily habit of yours. All right, enough of the introduction. Now let's straight away jump into the lecture, starting with question number 1. Consider the following statements regarding bleeding eye disease. It is caused by a virus that belongs to filovirus family like Ebola virus. The first case of this disease was witnessed in Marburg, Germany in 1967. Currently, there is no approved vaccine or treatment for this disease. How many of the above statements are correct? Now look, bleeding eye disease is also known as Marburg virus disease. Okay, MVD. So naturally, bleeding eye disease is called by Marburg virus. Okay, and what is so special about this disease? Why is it called bleeding eye disease? Well, the thing is that severe symptoms of MVD or Marburg virus disease include hemorrhage. Okay, so it includes hemorrhage like symptoms. Now, what do we mean by hemorrhage? Bleeding. It can be internal bleeding, external bleeding. Okay, so hemorrhage. Now, when you are suffering severe symptoms from MVD, it leads to bleeding of nose, mouth, gums, digestive tract, eyes also. That is why it is called bleeding eye disease. It has a very high fatality rate, mortality rate, around 24 to 88 percent of people infected with this disease die. So it's a very dangerous disease. Now, it is caused by virus, Marburg virus, that belongs to filovirus family, the same family that Ebola virus belongs to. Absolutely correct. Now, the reason why it's called Marburg virus because its first case was witnessed in 1967 in Marburg, Germany. But after that, most of the cases of MVD have been in Africa. The current outbreak of MVD is taking place in Rwanda. Okay, so this statement is also correct. Now, currently, it is included in the WHO's list of major diseases that can cause public health emergency. WHO marks this disease as one of the most dangerous diseases. Why? Because there is no approved vaccine or treatment for this disease. So it's a very dangerous disease basically. All right. So this statement is also correct. All three are correct. All right. Question number 2. Consider the following statements regarding UN Environment Assembly. It is the world's highest level decision making body on environment. Okay. Its headquarters are in Bonn, Germany. Okay. It was established in 2012 at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. Okay. Now look, United Nations Environment Assembly is the world's highest decision-making body on environment. This part is absolutely correct. Okay. Absolutely correct. It functions under UN Environment Program, UNEP. All right. And it was first established in 2012 at United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. This is also correct. Okay. But its headquarters are not in Bonn, Germany. They are in Nairobi, which is in Kenya. Right. So because of this, second statement is false. Now, why United Nations Environment Assembly was in the news? Because United Nations Environment Assembly basically gathered in Nairobi in 2022, and it came out with Nairobi resolution. Now, what was that resolution? The resolution was that all the countries part of UNEA would come together and negotiate a legally binding international treaty to end plastic pollution. Okay? So, for curbing plastic pollution, an international binding treaty should be negotiated. That was Nairobi resolution of UNEA. Now, the fifth round of negotiations for concluding a plastic pollution treaty were going on in Busan, South Korea. Okay, so the fifth round of negotiations of concluding a plastic pollution treaty were going on in Busan, South Korea, and these negotiations ended in a failure. Countries were unable to agree to the terms of this new plastic pollution treaty, and that is why it was in the news. All right, so 1 and 3 C. Question number 3. Consider the following statements regarding China plus one strategy. It is a strategy employed by Indian companies to reroute their supply chains away from China. Okay. As per Niti Aayog's report called Trade Watch, India has emerged as the biggest beneficiary of China plus one strategy. All right. Now, what is China plus one strategy? You see, during 2020 and subsequent years after that, well, the world was going through a phase of lockdown. And one of the most brutal lockdowns were taking place in China. So everything was shut down in China. Problem is that China is the supplier, the most dominant supplier of goods in the world. Most of the companies have set up their factories in China. Okay, most of the American companies, British companies, European companies, many countries have set up their factories in China, so the goods are manufactured in China and sold to the rest of the world. So China was the major supplier of goods to the world. Almost all the supply chains or majority of the supply chains were routed through China. But when China was going through one of its most brutal phase of lockdown, these supplies stopped. And these companies who were dependent on supply of raw material or finished goods from China suffered. Okay, so that is why most of these multinational companies decided to de-risk their supply chains. Now, what do we mean by that? They decided that along with China, they would find another country where they would set up their factories, so that in future, if China again goes through a similar situation, they are not left hanging. Okay, they can route their supplies from that country. Now, they named this strategy China plus one strategy. Now, when China plus one strategy was announced by multinational companies, mostly American and European companies, well, India got very happy because India thought that this plus one would be India. So, all these multinational companies would now take their factories out from China and set up in India because India is a more reliable partner to them than China, right? So India wanted to capitalize on this China plus one strategy. Okay. So it is a strategy employed by Indian companies, no multinational companies, to reroute their supply chains away from China. So this is false because it's not Indian companies, multinational companies. Okay. As per Niti Aayog's report called Trade Watch, India has emerged as the biggest beneficiary of China plus one strategy. Absolutely not. In fact, Trade Watch says, Niti Aayog's report says that India could have had the advantage of China plus one strategy, but India failed to capitalize on this advantage. Countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, okay, and many other countries, Indonesia, they capitalized on this. So MNCs established their factories to these countries. India did get some advantage, but not as many advantages as Malaysia and Vietnam got. So it is not the biggest beneficiary. The biggest beneficiaries were Malaysia, Vietnam, and other Southeast Asian countries. All right, India could have. In fact, Trade Watch says that India should now pull up its socks and take steps so that these MNCs choose India as their destination of factories. Okay, India should be the biggest beneficiary. Currently, it's not. So this is also false. The answer is D. And last, which of the following statements is are correct regarding lake effect snow? This weather phenomena leads to heavy snow, 5 to 6 centimeters per hour in a localized region. It is quite common in the Great Lakes region of United States of America. It is difficult to forecast this phenomena in advance. Okay, now, what is this phenomena, lake effect snow? You see, what happens is that right at the border between USA and Canada, there are these huge freshwater lakes called the Great Lakes. So the states, American states surrounding these states are collectively known as Great Lakes region. Okay. Now these are huge water bodies. Now generally what happens is during winters, cold winds from Canada cross the border and come into the US. Now, the comparatively warm and moist water vapor laden air right above Great Lakes get replaced by these cold winds. So when these cold winds come, the warm and moist air over Great Lakes get pushed away. In fact, they get pushed upwards, okay, into the atmosphere, and their place is taken by these cold winds coming from Canada. Now, because this air just above Great Lakes was warm and moist, it rises upwards. But because of the moisture it contains, they form clouds, very thin clouds. And these thin clouds actually precipitate, and then snowfall happens. Because it's winter, so snowfall happens, not rainfall. So snowfall happens, and this snowfall is very heavy. Okay, around 5 to 6 centimeters per hour. Now, this snowfall is basically confined to a very local region. It might happen that a particular city is receiving this heavy rainfall, and couple of miles or couple of kilometers away from that city, there is bright sunshine. Okay, it can happen. So it's a highly localized phenomena, but it happens. Okay, so this is correct. Now, this phenomena happens almost every winter in the Great Lakes region of United States. It also happens in eastern Japan, Lake Baikal of Russia, and many other parts of the world. But Great Lakes region almost every year witness this phenomena. Okay, so this part is also correct. Now, thing is, it is very difficult to forecast. It is very difficult for weather forecasters to predict this heavy snowfall. The reason is that these are very narrow clouds and they are easily blown away by winds. So it depends on the direction of wind where these clouds would move and descend as snowfall. Okay, so if the wind is blowing fast and it is blowing in eastern direction, then these clouds would move east and descend upon another city. So these clouds might rise in one city and descend upon in another city depending on wind direction, and that is why it is very difficult to forecast this phenomena in advance. So this part is also correct. The answer is B. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation, but it would add more value if you revise this lecture also. Revise these MCQs. Okay, now, where can you revise these MCQs from? Well, we have shared notes of this lecture on our Telegram channel. Where can you find our Telegram channel? Just below this video in the comment section, I have shared a link of our Telegram channel. All you have to do is just click on that link. It will take you to our Telegram channel, and from there you can download the notes for this lecture. These notes would contain written detailed solutions to each and every question discussed in this lecture. Okay? So make sure you spend another 5 to 10 minutes revising this lecture, because through revision, you'll be able to remember these MCQs for long periods of time. All right? And that is important, or else you'll very quickly forget them. So make sure you revise, spend just 5 to 10 minutes revising these MCQs. Okay. On that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.